Now that you've calculated the total lessons for an instructor, we need to work out when their next lesson is. The question says the next lesson that the instructor is due to teach should be displayed. Well, if we look at the lesson table, we can see that we have lessons and they vary from lessons that are in the past to lessons that are in the future. And the lessons for a specific instructor may be either in the past, even today, or in the future. So if we think about that, we have past lessons, we have present, and we have the future. We are only interested in the next lesson, and therefore that is lessons in the future. To do that, we need to think about what our criteria are going to be and how we're actually going to find this lesson. One method that we can use is to use the dlookup function. Now, dlookup will look up a specific field and a value from that field. So you would look up the field in a table with certain criteria. So we want to find the date of the next lesson. So if we were to use a dlookup function, and just in case you're wondering, we're not actually going to use dlookup, we're going to use something different. We could find the lesson date. Now the lesson date is written like this. It has square brackets around it and speech marks. And the reason we've got lesson space date is because if we look at the lesson table, that's how lesson date is presented. And we're going to find that in the lesson table. Now, if we were to do this, what we would get is the first lesson that it finds in the lesson table. So if I was to copy this formula now over to here, and we're going to have difficulty with our speech marks again. They have to be the straight speech marks, so I'm just going to correct those. And of course we need to start with equals. When we look at this now, it will just come up with the first date that it finds, or the date for the first lesson. So if you look at this, 27th of the 8th, 13 is the first date it finds for a lesson. Now we then need to think about, right, we only want this to be for that specific instructor and for lessons in the future. So let's start by doing this for the specific instructor. Okay, so we need to put in a criteria, and it will be the same sort of criteria that we used before. So we're going to say that the lesson instructor ID, because that is the name of the field here, lesson instructor ID, we want that to match, and I haven't put square brackets around it, so we'll just put those around. We want that to match the instructor ID on our form. So if I was to put that as our criterion, then what we would get is the next lesson, or the first lesson listed in the lesson table for that specific instructor. So if we look, we've got 27th of the 8th, 13 for instructor number 1. Okay, well there it is, that's instructor number 1. So if we go to instructor number 17, we should expect to see 31st of May. Okay, so we'll just go to instructor 17, and there we go, 31st of May. So it's not coming up with the next lesson yet, and it's certainly not coming up with lessons in the future, because we saw a lesson come up that was in the past. So what we're going to do now is change our criteria so that we include lessons in the future. So I'm going to put here and, okay, and we're going to say that the lesson date, okay, so the date of the lesson date must be, okay, after today's date, and we do that by date bracket bracket. So the lesson date must be after today's date. So what we're going to do is now have a look at this again, And you'll now see that Instructor 1 has not got a lesson in the future, nor has Instructor 5. But if we go to Instructor 17, they have got a lesson in the future. However, it wouldn't necessarily show their next lesson, although that looks like it might be their next lesson because we've got 31st of May and then we've got 1st of June as the next one. If I change this one to the 1st of May 2014, we would expect their next lesson to be the 1st of May. But what we've done by using DLOOKUP is it just finds the first record that matches the criteria. Well, the criteria is that it must be Instructor 17 and it must be after today's date. So it will find the 31st of May. Now if I close these down and open up the form again and go to number 17, you'll see that it's still showing 31st of May 2014, even though we know the next lesson is the 1st of May 2014. So what we're going to do is we're going to change our DLOOKUP to be DMIN, because that will find the smallest. Okay, now the reason we want the smallest is because we're looking at lessons in the future and we want the earliest lesson in the future. So the smallest lesson in the future will be the next lesson in the future. So now if we run this and we go to the end, we can see now it's found 1st of May 2014. Now I'm running this at 12:40 on the 15th of October 2013. So I'm just going to change some of my data and we'll have a look at the lesson table. As I said, it's the 15th of October 2013. I'm just going to write that down so that you can see. And we're going to have a look at these lessons again. Okay, and I'm going to have one that is today on the 15th of October 2013 and it's at 4 o'clock. And I've got one tomorrow on the 1st of May, sorry, not tomorrow, next year on the 1st of May 2014 at 4 o'clock. Now I want you to have a think about what should come up and what will actually come up. Okay, so we've got the 15th of October and the 1st of May. And it is 12:40 and we have a lesson at 4 o'clock. So our next lesson should be today's date at 4 o'clock. But actually it's coming up with the 1st of May 2014. Now the reason for this is because we said that the lesson date must be after today's date. Now if I was to put greater than or equal to today's date, that would work at the moment, but it would also come up with a lesson at 9 o'clock if we had a lesson at 9 o'clock, because that is today's date. So what we actually need to work with is comparing the time as well as the date. Now to compare the time, we use the phrase now instead of date, but as well as taking the lesson date, I'm going to add to it the time. So if we look at this, the time slot start, I'm going to add that to the date, and then it will give me 15th of October 2013, 1600, and it will be a full date and time. So that will be plus time slot start. Okay, so now we're going to have a look at this and see what it comes up with. We'll go to number 17 and there is today's date, 15th of the 10th 2013, because 15th of the 10th 2013 at 1600 is after the current time, which is 15th of the 10th 2013, 12:43 p.m. Therefore it's now finding the next record. So when you do this, it's worth putting in quite a few different tests. So putting in some that are today's date and before the current time, some that are today's date and after the current time, So let's have a look. We've got today's date, that's before 15th of the 10th 2013. So that's the current date for Instructor 17 before this time, that's after this time, and that's another date completely. And just to prove it works, we'll put it as 11 o'clock in the morning as well. And we still expect to see this one coming up because that is the next lesson. So let's have a look. We'll go back to design view and reopen it, so that will refresh it for us. Go to the last record, 15th of the 10th 2013. If I change that to be 11 o'clock this morning, or we'll go for even 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock this morning, we now expect our next lesson to be the 1st of May 2014. So I'm going to go back to my instructor form, and I think we'll need to close this, and we might need to close the lesson table as well to get it to refresh completely. So if we open up the instructor form, there we go, 1st of May 2014. Now I've made a lot of changes to this lesson table, so I've either got to reprint this out again, ready for question 3 part B, or I need to put those changes back to what they were originally. Now what you should be doing is saving your database regularly. So at this point, this is 4C that we've just finished. So I'm going to save as, I'm going to save my database. It says I've got to be all closed, that's fine, it will close them for me. And I'm going to put now that this is 4C. This means that I can go back to my database at various stages as we go along, and I can get to where I was before, and therefore if I make a mistake that messes all my data up, I can just go back.